So thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. Before we get started, I'd just like to say thank you to Val for working this out and Patty and everybody in PCA. And I'd also like to say thank you to Mayor Gallego for making this happen and giving me the opportunity to share Phoenix history with a lot of people around the valley. Because without her, we might and probably wouldn't be doing this. A little bit Phoenix beneath the surface. I'm going to talk about just the very earliest years. Obviously, we've been around since 1867, 1870, so there's a lot of history that's been built up over those years. But I'm just going to talk about the very beginnings of what we think of as Phoenix today. Okay, Val.
Okay.
One of the things that Phoenix has always been associated with, at least as long as I can remember, when I go back reading old newspaper, it's the same thing. Phoenix has always been associated with growth. I'm sorry. Some people call it sprawl, all these different things, but essentially the idea of constantly growing, both by land mass as well as population, has always been something that's been associated with Phoenix. Okay, Val.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to close something really quickly here. Okay. Am I present mode again?
Yeah, but you're a couple slides now. Okay, one more. Oh,
Okay.
wait. Okay. Oh, that's good enough. So
Okay.
I'd like all of you to just stop and think for a second. That question that I wrote in there, what city did Phoenix growth in those years compare to? And I've got the years up there a little bit higher. Phoenix growth 1870 to 1930. Obviously, the answer is already there, but as you can well imagine, if your first thought with that question was Los Angeles or Denver or El Paso or San Antonio or Chicago or Salt Lake City, you're in the ballpark of what most people answer. But the reality is, those two cities right there were growing about as fast as Phoenix in that time frame, which kind of surprises a lot of people. It surprised me when I first saw it. But Walla Walla, Washington, and Emporia, Kansas are both cities in the United States that were growing as fast as Phoenix in that time period, 1870 to 1930. Of course, we left them way behind a long time ago. As a matter of fact, if you've ever heard of Topeka, Kansas, Topeka was growing faster than Phoenix in that time frame. I don't know what the population of Topeka is these days, but I know it's nowhere near the 1.6 million that we have. Okay. So how did Phoenix begin? Well, before the Anglos, before the European Anglos and the white people arrived, there was a community of indigenous folks called the Huhugam, and that was they were in the valley for over 1,000 years, and all of a sudden, about 1400, 1450 AD, there's no more signs of them being around, and it's have yet to see or hear any experts who agree on what happened. Was there a takeover by another a group? Was there a big drought? Did they just meld into other groups? Whatever it might be, but the experts can't seem to agree as to what happened. They just know that they disappeared. If for some reason, as a historian, you are like me, where you like being in a spot where history has really happened, this is the place to go to Sudafvaki Park, also known as Pueblo Grande. There's an area on the south side of that complex called the Park of Four Waters, and that's where several canals come together, prehistoric canals. And if you want to stand in the spot where Phoenix really, really began, way back to prehistoric times, that's the place to go. It's on 44th Street in Washington. So every time I go there, I just feel all kinds of spirits going around, both from the Anglos as well as the Huhugam. Okay. This is just a little drawing trying to depict Jack Swilling. Some of you may have heard his name. He is credited by most people as the father of Phoenix. And the reason for that is he recognized the opportunity that he had to make some money by irrigation. And so this old drawing is meant to depict him when all of a sudden he realized the old Huhugam canals and what they did with them and what he as an entrepreneur and a capitalist could do in his present time, which was 1867. Okay. So the very beginning of the Anglo period, Jack Swilling was the founder of Phoenix. We'll just click through there we go. Yeah. He noticed the canals that had been dug by the indigenous folks. The thing to remember, there was hundreds of miles of these canals, and the Huhugam only had flat rocks and sticks and things like that to dig these canals. But Swilling rounded up about 15 to 16 people in Wickenburg, mostly miners, some farmers, came to the valley with about $10,000 and the equipment to dig some ditches, started digging a ditch to divert water from the Salt River. Their first attempt was unsuccessful, so they went further down the river. So I like to show people after I say that one of the things to take away from this presentation is the fact that what we know as Phoenix today, which is pretty much the center at Washington and Central, that's what was considered the center of Phoenix, the original town site, and it kind of still is today. But had the pioneers, Swilling and all of his partners, had they been successful, we would be talking about Phoenix being where Tempe is. So what this, and whoops, if you can go back, Val,
Oh,
I
sure. I'm
appreciate it.
sorry.
Yeah. Um, so what this map shows is, and I know it's a very busy map. I understand that. I would like you to focus primarily on the yellow blocks and the numbers. You see number one in red, and then further up and to the left is a two, and then the three and the four. Those are the four attempts to start a community by the pioneers, by Jack Swilling and his crew. The first attempt, number one, was over there about where the north end of the Mill Avenue Bridge is, which is Tempe. They ran into some hard rock, caliche, some kind of impediment that they either didn't want to or didn't have the equipment to break through. So they moved further down the river. And there was an attempt to create a community there where number two is. They put up a flour mill there. William Hellings put a flour mill in there. Jack Swilling built his house there. But the politics and the people who had bought some land in other locations around the valley, they shot that one down. There was a third attempt where the number three is. It's about where St. Luke's Hospital is, about 19th Street in Van Buren. That's where the number three is, and there was an attempt to build a community there, but there was too many Huhugam ruins. The farmers didn't want to take all that time and energy digging up all those artifacts so they could have some fields to plant crops and feed their families and sell some on top of that. So those three struck out. although number two got pretty close to being surveyed and made a town, but it didn't work out. And then number four is where the original town site ended up. And so that's what the center of Phoenix, that's what we know of today with Van Buren on the north side, Harrison or the railroad tracks on the south side, 7th Avenue on the west side, and 7th Street on the east side. So those were the boundaries of the very first town site. Van Buren, Harrison, and the Sevens. Okay, Val. Thank you. This shows the north end of the Mill Avenue Bridge. So somewhere in that area, we kind of figured this is where Swilling and his gang attempted to dig their first ditch and weren't successful. Okay. A little bit further down, these are historians. We like to collect old newspapers. So, again, I don't expect anybody to read this, but I do. The reason I put it up here is to show you the ruins of the flour mill, which were right about, if you know where Celebrity Theater is, just a couple hundred yards to the west of Celebrity Theater, about 30th Street and Fillmore around in there. That's where this huge flour mill was. And here's a few more pictures of it. And I understand they're grainy, but I'm trying to just give you an idea that these ruins represent the beginnings of a community. It didn't play out. There actually was it was called the Phoenix Settlement or Mill City. There were some residences and some businesses put together in there, but what eventually became Phoenix won out when it came down to voting for the town site. The picture on the right shows you a very clear picture of the ruins of the flour mill, which is really kind of the center of town. And you can see a couple ladies, one in a white dress and another one wearing a darker color, just to give you an idea of the size of these ruins. Unfortunately, they're nowhere to be found these days. It'd be kind of fun. Okay. I like to make the point that flour, FLOUR, was very important in new communities, both, mainly to feed the population, make breads and things like that. And there was a guy named William Hellings who recognized the potential in Phoenix, and he decided he was going to start a flour mill. So he looked around trying to find a used one. He found all the equipment, used equipment up in San Francisco, went up there, bought it. I like to depict this. This is just the route he took from San Francisco down along the coastline. Uh, Went around Cabo, probably stopped for a margarita or something. Went back into the Gulf, came all the way up to Ehrenberg, put it on some freight wagons, and freighted the whole thing into Phoenix. The whole operation, the equipment, travel, all of that ended up costing this guy. Now we're talking 1870-ish, ended up costing him about $75,000. So the point I like to make is a flour mill was very important in the early stages of a community, and this guy saw the opportunity to do that, William Hellings, and he was willing to spend a lot of money to make that happen. This is an aerial shot from 1930 that shows the flour mill area in that red circle. You can see it was right along one of the early canals. Obviously, when you have a flour mill, you need water. And so this is just an aerial view. To the left, you probably recognize at least the name of the Arizona State Hospital, the insane asylum. That is just a little bit to the west of where the original flour mill and what was called Mill City was, just to give you a perspective of the area we're talking about. So on the very left is 24th Street, and then along the bottom is Van Buren. So the state hospital is there at the intersection of 24th Street and Van Buren. This is a more recent overlay. It's the same overhead shot from 1930s showing the flour mill, but it's got more of a up-to-date modern um, base that the 1930 black and white overlay is placed on. So you can see Celebrity Theater right there. So this area again is around 30th Street and Fillmore. And you can see it was made into a golf course, actually. Um, El Molino Golf Course. Some of you more veterans, you might remember there was yeah, thank you. You can see the black dots, those are the greens. But there was an El Molino grocery store and a couple other businesses out around that area that were named El Molino, which translated means the mill. Okay, Val. There was also a marker around 28th Street in Van Buren. One of those markers is shaped like the state of Arizona. This is where one of the early farmers had some success at drawing water off of the canals or off of the river and into the ditch. And then they had some branches that came off and they grew some crops. And this marker was at 28th Street in Van Buren, and it signified that area where the first crops were grown and the first farmers had some success. Um, Unfortunately, late one evening, gosh, it's been 20 years ago now, if not more, a driver came around the corner and lost control of their car and wiped out that marker. And when I read that story, I immediately called the police department, the city, the parks and the streets people, and nobody has ever seen any remnants of that marker, which is unfortunate. And so we've been working towards trying to get some new markers placed around Phoenix where significant events happened in the earliest of days of Phoenix. But this one, um, about 20 years ago, got destroyed. I mentioned Jack Swilling a couple times. This is the only photograph, well, a copy of the only photograph known that exists of Jack Swilling, and that's him sitting down on the left. That's his adopted Apache son with him. And so you can at least see a picture of what most experts consider to be the father of Phoenix. And this is a picture of the adobe house that he built. And this was at about 36th Street in Washington, just south of there. If you know where the train tracks cross, there used to be an air research plant there, and I think it's a Honeywell. Now, that's where this Adobe residence was located. And these are ruins from about 1930 of the home that he built for his wife and his family. And I'll share with you the next slide a few details about that structure. I'm going to read this fairly quickly, but those of you that are familiar with East Phoenix and that area out around Greyhound Park and Celebrity Theater in the north part of the airport. I want you to think about those areas, especially the north side of the airport, as I read this, and think to yourself about all of this stuff happening and these plants growing and on the north side of the airport. A couple guys were walking around that area and they kept some notes on what they saw. So they came upon a neat little artificial pond and a clump of willows and cottonwoods, which was covered with tame ducks, the property of J.W. Swilling, whose house, a comfortably large one, 59 by 80 feet, stood nearby. Mr. Swilling's ranch is conveniently situated near the head of the main ditch, on which he has a vineyard and an orchard containing apple, peach, plum, pear, cherry, fig, walnut, and orange trees, all of which look thrifty and promising, except the latter, which were injured by the frost. A patch of fine large cane close by gave indication of the future production of sugar. So when you look at that industrial area on the north side of the airport and you think back to 1870 around that time, and these were farmers. They were growing all kinds of stuff. And it was experiences like this that showed them that with the desert, yes, a desert and it's dry, and it's got cactus and mesquite, but if you find a way to get water onto that ground, it will grow a lot of different types of trees and plants, and so that's what he was growing, as well as having his own little artificial lake with ducks on it. This is a similar 1930 aerial photograph of the ruins of Jack Swilling's house. It was called Dos Casas. And also, you can see his house circled in red was very near the canals. He needed water himself for all those plants and to take care of his family. So you can see the train tracks going by just in like the bottom fourth of the picture. That's the train track. So it gives you an idea again of where Swilling's house was. There's another photo of it. Really a big structure. Actually, Swilling put this house together using 96,000 adobe bricks. 90, not 9,600, 96,000. And the reason he did that is he was looking down the road and he thought, if I build a really big structure here, I can live in it, but if our plans for this area go through, the Phoenix will need a city hall, will need a jail, will need county stuff, all kinds of things. So he was looking ahead that if he built a home big enough, when that area became the city of Phoenix, he could make some money by either leasing the building or selling it outright to the city of Phoenix. Unfortunately, that didn't play out. So, next slide, please. So he got upset, gave up the whole attempt to make the city out there by Greyhound Park. So he moved his family up to Black Canyon City and built this rock house, which is still standing in Black Canyon City. So if you ever want to see it, it's right in the yard of some people who live there. So if you can just kind of be polite with them and understand that you're walking around in their yard. But they're pretty gracious for the most part. If you want to walk around in that rock house, they're pretty amenable to it. Swilling's Castle, Adobe. Again, it was around 36th Street and the train tracks. A couple years ago, one of the archivists, historians at Salt River Project, showed me a pile of rocks and old adobe, and based on what she had to say about it, this could very well be some of the leftover bricks from Jack Swilling's adobe house. I'm still in the process of looking for somebody who can date in quotes, this Adobe stuff without destroying it. So we haven't been able to find somebody that can do that yet. So what we have is three or four big clumps of mud and straw and rocks. So maybe one of these days we'll figure it out and find out if these are in fact from Jack Swilling's Adobe home. This is where the third attempt to build a community was, right where St. Luke's hospital is. So this whole area was really, I'll show you in another slide in a second, but this whole area was really covered with Huhugam ruins and relics and artifacts. Okay. This overlay, again, it's very busy, I understand. But the main thing I want you to take a look at, because the dark background, that's the area currently around St. Luke's Hospital. And all of the pink splotches and the dots and the little circles, those represent Huhugam ruins that were on this land. And so if you're a farmer and you're trying to get some land that is even and you don't have to work real hard on to grow some crops, and you look at all those ruins out there that have to be dealt with, you're not going to be too excited about that. So that's why the pioneers, when they took a look at this spot, they said, "No way, I'm not going to do that." And so the city moved on from here and moved further west. By the way, if you're ever driving around this area, you can see East Via Street is an angle. And the reason for that is East Via Street follows the path of Jack Swilling's original ditch. The original canal was called the Town Ditch, or formal name was the Salt River Valley Canal. But in the late 20s, they went underground and put a pipe in there so that any water would go through that pipe. And so then they covered that over and paved it, and that's what East Via Street is. It's if you dig way down in there, you could find the very beginnings of Jack Swilling's original ditch there. Um, this is Murphy's store. This is another attempt at having meetings with the different people that lived in the area at the time. They would meet at this place called Murphy's Store. And so finally they got to the point where they said, we need to get started and make Phoenix a legal entity and get a post office in here and survey this area. And so they decided that on October 20th, they were going to meet. There's about 200 people living here at the time, 240. And so they got together at this place on October 20th, and they picked three of the men that were part of Swilling's group. And they said, okay, you three go out, look around, pick a place that makes most sense for the town site, come back on the 26th and tell us what you decided. And so that's what they did. And they met at Murphy's store. And if you look a little to the left of that red circle, and you can see this is the location they chose, the Phoenix town site, which again was Van Buren, 7th and 7th, and then Harrison on the south. Okay. Again, as historians, passionate historians, we like to find things out, but we also like to find out what is there today. So if any of you have small children or grandchildren, or if you have business over near 7th Street in Van Buren, the spot where Murphy's store was is the entrance to the Children's Museum. So if you happen to be in there, you are standing right in the area where the decision was made to place the Phoenix town site where it ended up. So that picture is just a picture of the entrance to the Children's Museum. In 2020, I kind of nudged Mayor Gallego and the city council, and I told them about this. I said, we're about to celebrate our 150th, yeah. And so we created these coins. COVID kind of got in the way of the big celebration we had in mind, but we were able to make some coins for the October 26th recognition of the original town site being determined in 1870. So those are pretty neat. They should be, there weren't that many made, so I think we have some people, not many, but there'll be a collector's item one of these days. Okay. So the original town site, the survey was completed in 1870. There was 98 blocks, 320 acres. The first lots were sold in 1871, and the very first lot sold for $103. So that was right at about First Street in Washington. I would cringe to think about what a lot would sell for these days. I have no idea, but I'm sure it's a heck of a lot more money than $103. One of the interesting things about the history of Phoenix, the early history, is the north-south streets were actually named after Indian tribes for the most part. Originally, you can see Apache Street was 7th Street, Tonto was 6th Street, and then on down over on the right, Yuma was 4th Avenue, Mojave was 2nd Avenue. The only exceptions to that are the bottom two. Montezuma, who is not an Indian tribe, but Montezuma was a person. That was First Street, and Cortez, who is also a person, was First Avenue. So it's kind of interesting that the origins of the north-south streets were named after Indian tribes and then later were changed to numbers. This is a an aerial shot looking to the northeast of Phoenix, kind of what Phoenix looks like today. I mean, you can see City Hall, you can see the courts building, you can see different buildings in there. But what I want to talk about for a couple minutes is not the current one, but rather, go ahead, Val, but rather the same view from 1885, which is called a lithograph, and it was done by a guy named C.J. Dyer, who is buried at Pioneer Cemetery, by the way. And he was one-time mayor of Phoenix on two different occasions, I think. But what this is it's an aerial view of Phoenix again looking to the northeast. And without going into a great amount of detail, I mean, we do hour-long presentations just on this. Um, but according to our CJ Dyer expert, there was about 300 of these made, and there's only maybe 8 or 10 that we know of that still exist. And so there's a lot of good detail in there. So the question always becomes, and I've thought it myself, how did people handle the heat? And people say daytime, people say, oh, it was a lot cooler back then. Well, the research says the daytimes are just as hot and nights were cooler because we didn't have all these buildings that create this heat island. They used Adobe to make their residences, which Adobe is much cooler. And then in 1878 or 9, one of the other a guy named William Lount came into town and built an ice factory. So if you want to become an instant billionaire, go into Phoenix during the summer and build an ice factory. You're going to make a lot of money in the 1880. Some of the other things they did, they moved their beds outside. You can see the one on the left, they moved their whole bed outside. The guy on the right had an elevated idea, screened in. And then the bottom picture is a local hotel who moved the beds out onto what was known as a sleeping porch, and guests would sleep outside during the summer if they chose to, but it was going to be much more comfortable. So that's another thing is they slept, some people would hang burlap bags up in entrances to their rooms and then pray for a breeze of some kind. But that's another, I mean, goodness, Phoenix, let's say, goes from 1870 to maybe 1950 before air conditioning and refrigeration really became an everyday amenity in houses and businesses. So that's a long time living without air conditioning. Okay. Some of the early pioneers, you may have heard some of these names. John Y.T. Smith was actually the first Anglo to come into the valley. He harvested wild hay in the Salt River and took it up to Fort McDowell. So he was contracted with Fort McDowell to harvest this hay and t take his wagon and take it up to Fort McDowell for the animals. Jack Swilling, I've mentioned several times, built the first canal in the valley, and he built his 96,000 adobe brick house, Dos Casas. Daryl Dupa, you may have heard that name, credited with naming Phoenix, Tempe, and Kyrene. I had mentioned a little earlier, there was a three-person town site selection committee that went around and figured out where Phoenix should be located. Daryl Dupa was on that. He was one of the three people um, that made that selection. He also named Phoenix. I like to think about Dupa and Swilling and John Y.T. Smith and other people sitting around at Sudoff Hockey, shooting their pistols, drinking whiskey, thinking about different names. So Daryl Dupa, his idea won out. John Alsop, first mayor of Phoenix. He also led the creation of Maricopa County. This guy, when you read about him, he was not only the first mayor, he was a probate judge. He was a licensed physician. He was also a licensed attorney. And he also had the first windmill in town. So he's one of these multitaskers, he could do all kinds of things. William Hancock, some people call him the father of Phoenix because he did the first survey of the Phoenix town site. He also built the first building in the Phoenix town site, which was right near First Street in Washington. So if you happen to be downtown and you're on the northwest corner of First Street in Washington, that's where the very first building in Phoenix was constructed. I put this slide up here for a couple reasons. One, to give you an idea. Uh, the upper left photo is Phoenix, about Second Street and Adams, around in there. And a couple reasons that I share this. One is to show you that Phoenix in the early days was pretty much an adobe town. There wasn't a brick factory yet. Wood was too expensive to bring down from the White Mountains or Prescott even. So using mud and rocks and straw was very, very prevalent in Phoenix. And it's so much so it was really pretty much an adobe town. The bottom right-hand photo, if you haven't seen that mural that is Represents Melinda's Alley. It's right between the professional building and the, I forget the name of that hotel now. We call it the cheese grater, the Renaissance. I'm sorry. So it's right between the professional building and the Renaissance Hotel. That mural is of a lady named Melinda Curtis, who was a lady of the evening, and right down Melinda's alley between those buildings, that's where she conducted her business. And so the black and white photo in the upper left, that's an extension of Melinda's alley. So Melinda Curtis roamed the streets, and wherever there was business to be had, that's pretty much where she would be. About 5 years ago, we managed to find a 1921 city flag that was designed and made as part of a citywide contest, and this is the flag that won. And so again, I nudged Mayor Gallego and the city council. I said, "Hey, we located this flag. We should do something with it to take care of it." So we collected it. The city clerk got involved. We hired an expert on how to take care of this kind of material and how much light, to allow hitting it, those kinds of things. And so that's a tremendous find. It's a beautiful, beautiful flag too. One of the other things that well, it's been about a year now, but we're still trying to work on it, is we found a Civil War cannon, and it's up on a rise in the Papago Park National Guard property. The left-hand photo, you can see the cannon there. It's mounted on the ground, and that's the grounds of the very first Phoenix City Hall, which was between First and Second Street, Washington and Jefferson. And the cannon itself, it is marked 1864. So we have a cannon that was manufactured during the Civil War and long before Phoenix was ever even thought about. So that's pretty neat. So we're still working on how to present this to the public and get some press from it. If you haven't seen this video, I would encourage all of you to watch it. And I don't get any commissions or anything from watching it, but about a year and a half ago now, 2 years now, we put together a 30-minute video about Phoenix history, and there's 7 different people who are presenting. It's on location. We're at different places. We're in Candle Park. We were at Sudavaki. We're at the airport. We're at other locations. And it covers entire Phoenix history. And the cool thing is, it was nominated for an Emmy Award year before last. Didn't get the award, but being nominated was pretty cool. So I would encourage you, if you go on to Mayor Gallego's website, you'll see mine right there with her. And if you click on mine, you'll find that that video is right there for everybody to help themselves and watch it.